So I have the pleasure of being joined by Daniel Michaelsen, the Vice President of Strategic Relationships at EncorEstate Planning, and Mavis Norwich, the Head of Sales at Trust and Will. So we're going to dive into a couple different topics today, but kind of want to start just high level with the problem itself. Is that estate planning is obviously a very high value service that often feels disconnected from the rest of the financial plan. It's been manual and slow and has been notoriously challenging for advisors to track. But the shift that we're seeing is moving towards a model where tech doesn't just generate a document, but it actually manages the entire life cycle, from that first consumer click all the way to the final funding of a trust. So I want to see who's still paying attention. We have a poll for the audience that I want to put up here quickly. We just want to know, how would you describe estate planning inside your firm today? Have you implemented the solutions? You feel confident in your process? Things are rolling. It's now part of your holistic planning methodologies, or are you still seeing some challenges that messy and slow, or are you avoiding it completely at this time? So I'd love for you to answer that. But while we're kind of waiting on on the answers, I want to jump to our guests because I'm talking way too much and they're the experts here in this. We have to start with the who and the how. Now, if clients won't use the tech, the advisor obviously can't scale the service. So Mavis, I want to start with you because you've actually, and Trust and Will is fantastic about this, you've spent years looking at who the consumer is and their propensity to use technology. So how have you seen consumer behavior change in the last 5 years? If people are streaming music and applying for jobs online, what does that tell us about their expectations for estate planning?
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. I agree. Absolutely. We are streaming music. My favorite artist is about to drop an album in March, but it's so much larger than simply streaming music and applying for jobs. We are consuming digitally across telehealth, filing our taxes, and we expect to manage our decisions digitally. And estate planning has been one of those industries that's just historically been slow in this, but now you've seen a lot of different players in the field, and there's a lot of us here today that are solving this directly. And so what we've seen from consumers is that they're expecting this. They're actually talking with their advisors about what are their options beyond simply that traditional attorney experience. And 19% prefer online estate planning compared to doing it traditionally. And so we're seeing more and more consumers get to that point. I think as time goes on, we will see as well, there's definitely some gaps generationally on who is thinking about estate planning, but these younger generations such as millennials, Gen Z, Gen Xers, they're doing more and more in an online world, and estate planning is definitely meeting those needs for them.
Fantastic. And those are great stats that you have up as well. Daniel, I want to bring you into the conversation because on the flip side, we can't just hand a client a login and hope for the best. So how do you see the advisor-driven tech model working? How does tech help an advisor manage the document, fund, notify, and ultimately educate, hopefully, rather than just printing out a PDF, if you will?
Yeah, it's a great question, Shannon, because I've sat on the side as the attorney working with the client. I've also worked on the tech side with RIAs, working with advisors. And there's this idea of getting excited about something and then actually implementing it and having success with it. And that's where the drop off tends to happen. And estate planning specifically, when you start working with clients, getting them to take action takes a lot of work. Even getting them to bring in all the forms, right? How many times did we have to reschedule that? Am I giving them homework between the next meeting? So what Encore is working to do, and why I love that we're here with Trust and Will, is we've kind of taken, people need two different solutions and everyone wants to come at estate planning from a different lens. From Encore's side, what we're working on is, hey, you're the advisor. You need to be able to sit there and be the champion with the client. So Encore is really that platform that you and the client log in together and you both can work through it. So instead of giving homework to the client, what we're seeing is a very drastic drop in the fall off from people from getting from the start to the finish. So I always talk to people about create your documents, fund your documents, and then notify and educate them. And if you don't do all three, you're not really doing estate planning. And we'll talk later about where to involve attorneys, how to get a little deeper. But I think if an advisor is not finding that, hey, I want my clients to be successful getting to the end, not just having access to something, that's really the difference of the conversation. Access to an estate plan versus hand holding someone and getting to the end with them.
Absolutely. So I want to go ahead and throw up those poll results as well. So hopefully everyone had a chance to take the poll. Again, I just wanted to get a pulse on the audience. I am impressed. We have an audience then that knows what they're doing. This is actually a little bit higher than I expected. So obviously incredibly encouraging, and it just shows the maturation within the estate planning ecosystem right now. So folks are pretty confident in their process, about 43%, and then followed by 32% that it's slow, but they're trying. So I just want to get your kind of initial reactions to this, that knowing this is the case now. Mavis, would love to hear from you, seeing now that the audience is pretty confident in their estate planning processes.
I think having spent time in this space, it's not surprising. There's a lot of great work that's being done. But what I see in that is like there's still 57% that we need to get to. And thank you to the 43%, but the 57%, like we are all here to help you in that.
Absolutely. Daniel, any thoughts before we keep moving on? I saw your initial reaction, so.
No, I think it's good and surprising, but I also spend a lot of time working with offices doing it. And then we uncover, oh, you did part of the estate plan, but you didn't do the other steps that are included in it. So my challenge is by the end of this, hopefully we look at the estate planning process as involving more things so that I care more about the client having a plan that's funded and completed and people know about it more than anything else. So that's my only challenge to anybody who's like, let's critically think through, are we getting our clients the best possible outcome at the end? And there's a lot of ways to get there.
Sure. So let's talk about that a little bit, where that human meets the machine aspect of all this, because again, we've all said it, that technology shouldn't replace that advisor and even attorney relationship, but technology is really meant to help define the swim lanes, right? So Daniel, I'm going to keep picking on you here for a little bit. Talk to us about the hands-off aspect. Where does the advisor start? Where does the attorney end? Where's the delineation? Where's the through line for all of this? And how does your tech help these two professionals essentially play together without stalling the process?
Yeah, I think that question honestly can differ depending on what firm you're in, right? So I'll speak in a general sense of when you're working with a client as an advisor, you know them, right? So number one, if that client is the person who, when the phone rings, they call you 3 times a week, or they're always asking things, they're probably not someone that you want to guide them through the whole process with. That's someone who they're going to get you in sticky situations. And that's nothing based on their asset level or anything like that. Encore, we also have disqualification questions. So unlike our friends over at Vanilla or at wealth.com that are on here too, we don't focus anything on the high net worth space. We actually have an attorney network across the country and we just refer them out to the attorney. So we're not here to visualize it. We're not here to go through it. What Encore is here for is to do really flexible, revocable trusts that you can include corporate trustees for the gifting and the strategies you talked about earlier. But when you work through a plan, if they're disinheriting children, if there's complexity there, you need to refer it out. That's just our viewpoint from everything. What we're here to talk about is most people that just don't have a plan done. A lot of clients, we just did a survey with jump.com, right? 12,000 different client meetings that were analyzed there. 93 clients said they wanted estate planning in it, and only 22% of them from those meetings, that set, had an estate plan done. So how do we get people through it? Well, most plans is just collecting information. An estate plan is really 5 questions. Who gets my stuff? The beneficiaries. How do they get it? The method of distribution. And that's oftentimes different for each beneficiary. Who makes medical choices? Who makes financial choices? And who are the guardians to my kids? If you know your client can answer those, great. Guide them through the technology. We can collect that. We can get plans done. Some people need to ask questions. So maybe we want to involve an attorney midway through. The important thing is you should feel comfortable in the conversation, and having that disclosure up front from Encore standpoint, we use it like a circular wheel. So whenever we train anyone, you start with the disclosure going, we're not an attorney. And then when the client asks you a question, because we're looking at a screen and that's answering a certain question together, and they're like, hey, Shannon, what did you do? How would you answer this? You know me really well. That's where I go, hey, remember at the beginning, we signed this disclosure. My job here is just to show you the screen and get you to answer the question. If you can't answer that, then we need to involve the attorney and you can pay their fees and go the deeper process with it. Utilizing technology like this is purely designed for you to hold the client accountable to answer the question versus sending the link out to the client and waiting for them to do it. So it gets complicated for each individual scenario because I don't know your client. But if they're complicated, bring the attorney in. Default, send them to the attorney. But for those people that you know, hey, we can walk through this, they can answer those 5 questions, then that's where the estate plan through the technology is going to come in handy.
And where are you seeing maybe the biggest drop off? Because take someone like me, for example, this is something that I know I need to do, but for some reason it feels incredibly daunting. Like you say, it's those 5 questions and I'm fired up like, oh my gosh, I could get this done in the next 30 minutes of my life. But I would imagine that between the point of the advisor actually talking to their clients and getting them to actually fill out questionnaires or paperwork, there's probably a drop off because of maybe similar just behavioral aspects of the whole process. So curious where you're maybe seeing the drop off and where advisors can help just get clients over that finish line.
Yeah, so the drop off here, I'll tell you, so we have an academy, like anyone can join. It's all free. You don't even have to work with Encore to go through it. There's trainings there where that drop off, if you go through that, kind of disappears because there's a simple process, which is we have that conversation, you sign the disclosure, I give you the option, go to the attorney, or we go utilize Encore. If you utilize Encore, what we're doing is we're actually scheduling a meeting. So I'd hand you a 1-pager and I'd say, hey, Shannon, here's 5 questions. And if they're married, I'm going to say, you and your spouse talk about these 5 questions. And then we're going to meet. Do you want 1 to 3 weeks to think about these things? We're going to get together. So now as the advisor, my job is holding Shannon accountable. So if I'm going to be like, Shannon, in 3 weeks, we have a calendared meeting. And she didn't have to go to the link I sent her to fill it all out. All she had to do is take that 1-pager with the 5 questions and have real conversations with her spouse if she was married, or just think through it for herself. And then when we meet in 3 weeks, we're filling in all the information. If we need anything that's extra from that or they have questions, we have the 1-pagers that fill in all the gaps there. And that's at the point where, okay, once we do that, Encore's already reviewing the docs. We're preparing the deeds in process with that. So if you have to have different steps for different parts of the process, that's where the fall off happens. With Encore, we prepare and record the deeds as part of the process. We're funding the businesses as part of the process. So from the client standpoint, you're not telling them do this, and then after we do it, go do this, and after we do it, go do that. The more gaps there are in the process, the more room there is for someone not to have a completed, funded, and notified and educated group of people. With Encore, it's no, we're filling it out together. We're hitting submit. And in that process, we're doing all the deeds. So when notary happens, your job is send us back the notarized deed and we'll go to the county and record it for you. As long as you're involving one process and having as little handoffs as possible, that's where the success is going to come.
And I love that you brought up the accountability, that it's on the advisor to hold their clients accountable for this, to get it done right. Because in the long run, like obviously this matters and is part of the holistic planning process. So I appreciate you calling that out. And Mavis, before I jump to you, Daniel, if you wouldn't mind, we're getting a couple questions. Folks want you to list off those 5 questions again, if you don't mind.
Yeah, there's a 1-pager. It's free. Go to Encore. You don't have to sign up. It's called Introduction to Estate Planning. Just type Introduction to Estate Planning in Encore and it'll pop up. Who gets your stuff? Beneficiaries. How do they get it? That's the restrictions on it. Who makes healthcare decisions? Who makes financial decisions? And the optional 5th is the guardians if you have minor children.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you for that information. So Mavis, I need to ask you, before I even ask you the next question, hoping you can actually answer this question that came through from our audience, because we had some folks say that they're actually confident in their process, but it's not scalable and they need help scaling. So what advice do you have for folks around that?
Yeah, I think part of it is simply making a plan within your internal office. If you're an individual advisor, if you work within a team, decide, who owns that, and then really look at the digital solutions that you have available. All of these different providers, including Trust and Will, we have, services and support teams that are there. Meet with those support teams and say, how are other advisors rolling this out? How are they managing scale? And making sure that you're leveraging that information, those resources. And like what Daniel just shared, those 5 questions that you can quickly search on Encore's site. We have an advisor marketing kit on getting started. And so I think it's just being diligent and making sure that you have the time set aside. As a sales leader, I bring on new solutions. And when I do, it is sometimes daunting. It's about carving out 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day to simply make sure I understand how that solution works. And then, that 15 minutes then becomes habit, and then it becomes scalable.
Great advice. So thank you for that. And just in a similar vein too, obviously we've seen a ton of innovation in this space to ultimately make estate planning more accessible. So when you look at this last decade, we've seen things like mobile notaries and digital intake go mainstream. So how are you seeing these innovations make estate planning more accessible for demographics that maybe historically have even avoided it?
Yeah, Shannon, it's like you answered my question of have you done your estate plan, but we're almost at a year mark now on this question. So eventually I know that you will.
I need somebody to show up to my house and just sit me down and force me to do it.
But we see a lot of the barriers, and one of those is simply like the thought of I don't have enough assets yet, or it's really about shifting away from net worth to legacy. And maybe the things that you value, are not maybe like what you think you'd tell your financial advisor about necessarily, or you'd want to talk to a lawyer about, but they are valuable to you, and you deserve the opportunity, every American does, to be able to list those in their estate plan. And so by taking that into the privacy of your home, having those conversations individually with your spouse, maybe who your beneficiaries are, and putting those questions out of like, hey, I am filling out my estate plan and I'm going to list my artwork, for example. Is there something in particular that you want me to make sure that you get? And that really allows people to have that in the privacy of their home without maybe that pressure judgment, especially when you think about being in the room with a lawyer. If you yourself are not a lawyer, that can feel maybe intimidating. And so what we've seen is that it allows for everyday people to realize that no matter what the makeup of their assets are, that they too deserve that opportunity, and that they don't have to have any embarrassment around it. It's not just like putting it off, which I know, Shannon, I think is your reason, is you just keep putting it off. But it's also about being able to confidently and privately reflect on what's most important to me. And it doesn't matter if it's important to a lawyer or not.
Absolutely. I mean, my most important thing is who's going to get the animals. So that's really what needs to be figured out on my end. I'm feeling seen during this webinar because it's, again, I'm sure I fall into a camp of a lot of folks where it's, you need to do it, but for some reason there's just this mental barrier of, and in firms like Trust and Will and EncorEstate make it so easy that I literally have no excuse not to get it done, because again, it can be taken care of in 20, 30 minutes when all is said and done. So that leads me to the concept of operationalizing the business line, because it still seems like while there's been a ton of improvements and adoption around it, a lot of advisors might still be treating estate planning more as a project when the goal is to probably treat it more like a true business line. And I know, Daniel, that you've said that estate planning isn't just another piece of in the tech stack, it is a business line. So you kind of got into it a little bit, but let's go a little bit deeper. How does an advisor build this into their natural touch points so it doesn't feel like an extra meeting or a static event and one-offs?
Yeah, and I think Mavis was spot on, right? You have to spend a little bit of time. That's actually probably the biggest drop off for what we look at is advisors who get excited, try to do something estate planning related and never spend 5 minutes learning anything. And then it's not a spam your clients, right? When you bring in estate planning, this is a process. So one of the playbooks that I created on Encore side is how to onboard estate planning in 13 months. What I brought up on the screen here is an estate planning life cycle. So an estate plan isn't a one-time thing. That's why we work with financial advisors, because, hey, you move states, we need to update those POAs. Hey, you have another kid, we need to make a change. When you work, and now I'll talk you through that 13-month, is Encore is not a subscription service, first of all, so everyone can just use it. And then whenever clients need documents, that's when it's paid for. Whether they do a will or a trust, it doesn't matter. We can do transfer on death deeds for wills. We can do deeds transferring to the trust if they're doing a trust. We can do ladybird deeds. So we fit all of the solutions for the client. And in the 13-month process, how I coach on it is, okay, I'm going to start in February. So me or my admin's going to look at my calendar for next month, for March. And we have pre-made emails for this from our marketing kit. So you grab it, you send the 2-sentence email to everyone I have an annual review with in March. It says, hey, Shannon, I'm so glad we have an annual review coming up. For Shannon and I, I know you've been procrastinating forever, but it's important for us this year to do your estate plan. And I'm just going to ask, do you or do you not have an estate plan? Whether it's a will, a trust, both, because a lot of people don't even know what the word estate plan means. So if Shannon replies, yes, I do, I'm going to get those documents. And what I'm going to do before my meeting coming up in March is Encore, you can just upload it. Our team will actually read it, summarize it into a one-pager for you. And then in that meeting, I still have to do steps 2 and 3, right? Create docs, fund docs, notify, and educate, so I can provide value. So in my annual review with Shannon, I'm going to look at it, show her the one-pager and go, here's who your trustees, healthcare, everything is. Are these all accurate? Okay, thumbs up. Hey, you own a home. Did you ever do anything with the house? Is there any sort of transfer on death deed? Is it in your trust? You can just ask Encore. We'll actually do a title search for you and find out. And then we have a one-pager for all the roles. So you look at it and go, hey, you've named these 5 to 15 people in your document. Do they even know that they're in your document? And then you can grab Encore's one-pager for all those roles, print out a copy of that summary page for all of them, highlight that person's name, throw your cover letter on it, and that's 5 to 15 introductions. As an attorney, that's how I got 100% of my business. Just send out 5 to 15 people, every single client I get to the end. That's why it's not just a document. If I'm an advisor, create docs, fund docs, notify and educate. That's how you're uncovering assets. That's how you're getting the referrals. So that I think that's the big part here is if she didn't have a plan and she answered the email, then in my annual review, I'm not saying let's walk through the questions. She's going to get to guardianship of her dog and go, I need 6 more months to think about this thing. So what I'm going to do is hand her that introduction to estate planning document with 5 questions. We're going to sign a disclosure if we decide to work together through this. And we're going to schedule another meeting 1 to 3 weeks later where we're going to walk through the software side. From Encore, the software is not it's not a tech stack because it's free. You're only paying when you need plans to get done. We're training you of how to operationalize this. So it's going to take a year, right? 13 months because I start in February. I'm emailing all my annual reviews for March and so on. You go through the year. That's how you get through your book of business. What I'm not doing is sending a bulk email out saying, hello, everybody, I can help you with your estate plan now. Click, do this, because we know you have to build process around it. And some people might want the link, and that's excellent because they just want to walk through it. They don't even want to talk to you about it. We see a lot of children of clients that way. We do just a powers package. So power of attorney, healthcare directive. That's what, if I was an advisor of Shannon, I'd say, Shannon, please do your powers of attorney, because if you get in a car crash, no one can talk to the doctor for you. I'm the nerd who has a little flash drive on my keys and actually have my healthcare directives and stuff in there. Maybe I'd give one to Shannon, but single people need different type of estate planning documents, and it's for everybody here.
All right, I'm being convinced by you two. Fair enough. But Mavis, I want to ask you too, especially going back to the maybe 57% or whatever that are still struggling with estate planning. For those firms that want to move from doing 5 plans a year to 50 without increasing their overhead or admin burden, things like that, what does successful adoption look like when utilizing a solution like a trust and will, say in the first 60 to 90 days? For the advisors watching, what are the characteristics of the firms that actually are seeing ROI in this type of solution?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's setting a goal, right? Most of us that are in this room are all very goal oriented. And so it's no surprise, like bring those goals, set the benchmark. Internally with our account management and our customer success team who do the implementation, we benchmark 3 estate plans completed for each advisor in their first 90 days. And so helping those advisors create those goals early on. And then using the toolkits that we have available, such as the marketing toolkit, introducing this to your clients. One thing as well is like beyond just, Daniel, I think pointed it out perfectly, like don't just send a blast out to your clients, but look at, okay, what are the meetings that I have coming up this month, this quarter? Who am I going to talk to about estate planning? Making that part of the process. And then for the ones that don't have estate planning, really making that a goal. Maybe it's getting 50% of them to complete their estate plan within the next quarter or by the time they have their next meeting. Also looking for those life moments. You have conversations with your clients constantly when they're getting married, when grandchildren are being born, when children are graduating from university. Those are all opportunities to introduce or rediscuss estate planning. I think one thing that we all talk to often is that estate planning is not static, it's dynamic. So, building on that time and time again. And instead of just sending like the college sweatshirt, great, you got into Princeton, send that, power of attorney, that medical directive. Because to Daniel's point, like those children going down, they're single, they need someone to be able to make those decisions for them. And then again, build the habit, just bake it in, take time, 15 minutes, 20 minutes to make the habit stick.
I love that. And I'm hearing that from both of you, is that it's really about building that habit. So I think that's great advice as well. And just the few minutes we have left here, I want to talk about what's next. So let's look forward a little bit. And Mavis, I'll start with you. What can folks expect to come down the pike, or what's on the roadmap for Trust and Will?
And so, continuing to leverage technology and help with adoption, that comes with scale and using the AI that's available to us to really drive the advisor experience. More details around the client progress, really helping to dive in. Are they at the notary stage? Are they at filling out the questionnaire stage? Have they funded their trust yet? Helping the advisor to go into that conversation and say, okay, Shannon, like I see you've signed your paperwork, but you haven't funded your trust yet. To Daniel's point, it's not done until it's fully done. And then more integrations. We hear this constantly from advisors, but we know that you want this to integrate into your existing workflows. And then finally, an estate tax report for every client. In our previous session, we heard a lot about using taxes and charitable giving, helping to bring that as well, that tax summary, so that each advisor can really work with their clients and make sure that they're leveraging all of their benefits and opportunities as best as possible.
Great. And Mavis, can you just give a quick shout out where folks can find the marketing toolkit?
Yes, you can go to trustandwill.com/advisors. As well, if you're interested in a strategy session, learning more, please scan this QR code. We'll share these out afterwards, but go to trustandwill.com and you will get in touch with the right people.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Daniel, take us home. And then I know you need to get on a flight, so we got to get you out of here. So what's on the roadmap for EncorEstate, and where can folks learn more about what you're working on?
Yeah, just head over to EncorEstatePlans.com. You don't have to sign any DocuSigns. You don't have to pay anything. Just go create a free account, access our knowledge base. What's coming new for us here in the new year is we already allow you for a beneficiary to add special needs trust language. So a third-party springing special needs trust, not creating anything standalone. We are working toward the option through our attorney partners, because we have them all over the place, to actually be able to create standalone third-party special needs trusts as well. We also have some fun partnerships coming out. There's going to be a launch of more playbooks. We have a playbook done for you, all the presentations for seminars, webinars, all of that, actually how to implement it. So that's what we're seeing here in 26.
Fantastic. And then everyone watching, listening in, take a look at the slide as well. Looks like you got a special deal for first 10 new advisors. So be sure to check out those links and learn more about Trust and Will and EncorEstate Planning. That flew by. So Daniel, Mavis, thank you so much. Great discussion today and your contributions. Always a pleasure chatting with you both. I can set you free now, but thank you again. And for those of you that have questions, Mavis and Daniel can follow up separately post webinar. But we have now come to our final session. So again, thank you all for sticking with us. This is always a very popular summit that we host.